Hello, everyone tuning in today. We have with us comedian, actor, writer, director, and member of a 90s boy band, Kevin Yee. He wrote, created, and stars in the independent TV pilot, A Guide to Not Completely Dying Alone, that will be screening at this year's South by Southwest. So thanks for being with us today, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So to start out, just in your own words, tell us what A Guide to Not Dying Completely Alone is all about.
Sure. It's about a queer Asian writer who goes to a gay bar on his 40th birthday. He has a panic attack in the bathroom and passes out. And then he wakes up in the hospital and he realizes how disconnected he is from society and life in general. And he decides to turn his life around and change it for the better with the help of a new friend that he makes along the way. And while doing this, he writes his own self-help book called A Guide to Not Dying Completely Alone. So I call it the bitchy eat, pray, love. It is a dramedy, but there are comedic elements to it as well. And yeah, so I'm presenting this pilot. It's originally a full 30-minute pilot, but for South by Southwest, I have an 11-minute kind of like pilot presentation, and hopefully I'll be able to tell this story in a bigger way in the future.
Awesome. So, I know for a lot of people, myself included, the pandemic really sparked a level of rumination over our own mortality, the limits of the time we have on this earth versus the things we might want to accomplish, whether that's with our careers, relationships, etc. Those kinds of themes are expressed in this project. I was just wondering if the pandemic influenced your creative process.
Oh, very much so. I did actually write this more in my mid 30s, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Mhm.
But it became even more apparent during the pandemic. And I had actually not had a panic attack
Mm,
before when I wrote the script. And then during the pandemic was the first time I ever had it. So it became more
mm,
apparent to me. And the idea of loneliness, I think, became even more relatable. I think everybody was kind of struggling with that, as you were saying, loneliness and mortality and all of these things. So it kind of brought it into laser focus, but it was something that I was already kind of experiencing and feeling in the world that we were living in before the pandemic as well.
yeah. So I know it definitely made me think about those things, and I think a lot of people. So, uh, it sounds like the development of this project had some kinds of twists and turns. You did end up self financing and crowdfunding through Indiegogo. What was it like to produce a project where you didn't necessarily have to answer to anyone?
Oh, amazing. And I think that was the purpose was I had had the script for a long time and it had been floating around Hollywood. And I am a TV writer as well. So I've been
Mhm.
writing for shows around town and I had been using it and I knew that there was something special and something relatable to it, but it was really struggling to find its home because I
Mhm.
think also as relatable as it is, a lot of projects get pushed to the finish line because there is someone famous attached or there's something more general to the story. The fact that this is based or centered on a queer Asian character, I think, was bumping a lot of people because we don't really have that. It doesn't exist. We have queer Asian stars at this point now because of Bowen Yang and Joel Kim Booster and Nico Santos, but none of them have been the center of their television shows.
Mhm.
And so it was hard for me to pitch it and to sell it because people would be like, well, we've never seen this, which should
Mhm.
be the point of Hollywood, but is not. So we almost sold this to a Canadian company. I'm Canadian, actually. So
Mhm.
we almost sold it to a Canadian company like 2 years ago. And the deal fell through. And that's when I finally was like, I think that I have to show it because nobody has seen this before. People are struggling to imagine what this would look like. So this is really my complete version of what a queer Asian centered television show would look like. As a television writer myself who writes for shows and can be kind of more general with my writing if I need to be. But I think there is something about authenticity that it felt like it was more important that I showed it fully in this project so that people could understand what it would look like.
Mhm. And so, just speaking more to your experiences as a queer Asian creative professional, um, speaking about people like Bowen Yang, I was just thinking the other day, I feel like I've seen him play the gay friend in 12 different projects at this point. And so I guess just from your perspective as a queer artist, do you feel like your voice has been limited by the powers that be working in the film and TV industry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a long and uh, long discussion. Obviously, I've been actually in the industry since I was 6. That was my first paying job. So I
Mm-hmm.
came up as a child, and then I was a teenage performer. I was a Broadway performer. I was in the music industry. I've been in the film and TV industry. I was on the show Dickinson as an actor. So I've kind of seen all the sides of Hollywood for my entire life and how
Mm-hmm.
it's changed and not changed. And I think that Hollywood has always kind of been stuck in a rut. And one thing that happens is every now and then they're held accountable for how diversity is included. But what seems to happen is the language just changes, but not the actual system. I think we have a systemic issue in Hollywood about how people are included. And it is just because a lot of Hollywood is about commercialism and selling to the greatest, the biggest audience that they can.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a challenge when the majority of Hollywood and the majority of film and TV has been centered on straightness and whiteness. And that is how we're used to telling stories. And changing the system takes such a big overhaul that, again, I think people like me get brought into the system and asked to conform as as opposed to finding authenticity within the diverse characters that are being brought to the screen now.
And what is it like to try to be channeling that authentic voice and trying to push for more diverse representation at the same time that we are seeing such an ugly backlash, like what we've seen in Florida and other places, across the country and the world? What is it like to kind of have that contrast?
It's difficult because I think people think Hollywood is more open-minded than it actually is. And so it is a hard system to change. And the difficult part of the conversation is that it is more helpful for me to exist in the system as opposed to not.
Mm-hmm.
But existing in the system does often mean that I am faced with racism, casual racism, casual homophobia, or being told to conform. Like I said, I think that's a big thing that happens with us is that we come into the system and we're told they want us for our name and our diversity, but the authenticity part is kind of like testing the limits a lot of Hollywood storytelling. So it has been a challenge and it's always been a challenge. But like I said, if I was to give up, there would not necessarily be somebody there to take that spot. And then that becomes difficult because one of the biggest complaints that I always hear from like Hollywood is like when they're looking for Asian writers or Asian actors, they're like, we can't find any. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, you're not really cultivating that. It's the same with queerness too. It's like what in the moments that they need it, it's have you cultivated those artists and brought them into Hollywood in a way that they're now capable to do that job. And often, like my own shows that I've written on, the writing rooms that I've been in, the only, like all of them have had Asian characters
Mm-hmm.
and all of them have had queer characters. So I've never been in a show that's just like straight white men because
Mm-hmm.
I'm only brought in when they need that diversity factor for authenticity or for sellability. And that's not necessarily wrong. I think it's important that they do have someone like me in the room if there are Asian characters or queer characters. But it is about cultivating talent right now. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge because it's now just starting. And so we have a lot of like less powerful queer and POC people, but it's the top of the system that needs an overhaul. And how do we get there?
Mhm.
We're going deep today. So
Yeah. No, no, I like it. And I mean, I watched your pilot last night. I think it's fantastic. It's a human story, and it's funny and it's serious and has bittersweet moments. And there's just such an incredible story that you told, and those 11, 12 minutes. So I really hope a lot of people see it at South by Southwest because I think it's a great project. Um, just kind of maybe on a more silly note, earlier in the interview you called A Guide to Not Dying Completely Alone a bitchy eat pray love. So what would be your three dream locales to eat, pray, and love, but in a bitchy way?
Definitely drag brunch would be my favorite eatery,
Yeah.
or drag bingo. Anything drag is
Hmm.
the best place to eat. Um, I don't pray. I'm not a religious
Yeah.
person, so I guess when I feel like I need a spiritual connection, I go to the mountains. I live in Los Angeles, and I go to the
Hmm.
Verdugo Mountains for a hike
Hmm.
and just have my moment with the universe. Love. Love is a tricky one, and I think that's one that like the series explores a little bit because I am
Hmm.
very much like that character where I've been very disconnected.
Hmm.
But I guess the one thing that I have realized later in life is how much I miss my family. My family's all in Vancouver. And I've been away from them basically since I was a teenager, and I'm missing them in a way that I don't miss, that I haven't in the rest of my life. So I would say the best place to love is Vancouver, which you can also get a drag brunch, and you can also go hiking.
Yeah.
So Vancouver, probably all three of those things.
Yeah. Check all three. Can't beat
Yeah.
that. So, it just to wrap it up, go ahead and let everyone know where they can check out your pilot. And if you have any other upcoming projects you want to plug, go ahead and do that too.
Sure. Well, right now it's only available for viewing at South by Southwest, which is
Mm.
March 9th to the 18th, I believe, in Austin, Texas.
Mm.
And then I'll be doing other festivals, at least through the summer. At least they're submitted, so we'll see what happens. And then I don't know. I might actually just release it on YouTube or somewhere so that everyone can see it.
Mm.
And other projects, I did write for a new Disney show, which I'm really excited about. It's called Haley's on It, and that
Mm.
comes out in the summer. Stars Oli'i Cravajo, who played Moana, and
Mm.
um, Manny Jacinto, who played Jason Mendoza on The Good Place. So it's a funny, crazy new animated series that'll be on the Disney Channel and Disney Plus in the summer.
Mm.
And I think that's it. I have a whole bunch of
Mm.
stuff coming up so that I can't talk about.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can come back and chat with you again
Yeah.
then.
Great. So, yeah, thanks so much for talking with me today. If you're going to South by Southwest, definitely check out the pilot program because A Guide to Not Dying Completely Alone is definitely something you should check out, in my professional opinion. So, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks so much.
Yep.